What was your very first symptom you noticed, and what was your reaction? Had you previously heard about ALS, or did you assume it was something else?
Yeah, my first um, signal, whatever it was, a tremble in my knee. I was just like watching TV one night, and the muscle was just starting like tremble and stuff,
Mhm.
which is odd. So I thought that's kind of weird. So I went to my doctor, and through the course of time, we came up with it being ALS. Yeah.
The first time you were with the sorry. The first time you were diagnosed with ALS, what did you know about the disease, and what did you expect it to be?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about the disease. You know, I I heard about like Lou Gehrig's, and then obviously a few years back they had the ice bucket challenge, which kind of like spread awareness and stuff. But yeah, I didn't know much about it at all until I had it, and people around me didn't know anything about it either. And then I like looked it up online and stuff to find out more about it.
So what was your reaction given you didn't know a lot of information?
Yeah, it was uncertainty pretty much because like some of the stuff that when you Google stuff, you just hit the rabbit hole and you go down, and then you just know about 2 to 5 years to what they give you usually.
Mhm.
That's concerning, obviously, when you have kids, especially, you know, and yeah, so it was kind of scary at first, not knowing what I was in for.
How is your journey compared to what media, your doctors, and other people have told you and you've thought your journey would take you on? Like, how is your journey compared to what you expected to happen?
With having ALS.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I try to be positive about life, and you can just deal with what you get, you know. And yeah, I'm just making the most of it. You don't allow it to consume you, and you just it is what it is kind of thing.
Has your progression or anything else differed from what you expected? Like anything, obviously, the way you look at the disease and your perspective is different than others may think may be, but how has the progression of the disease itself been different?
Yeah, but with ALS, there's so many different types of ALS, and I have friends that have had extreme cases and have passed away quite rapidly. So that was obviously sad, and you kind of feel like you're next or whatever. But with Kasadi and Tofersen, it's kind of giving me hope, I guess, that I'm going to beat that whole 2 to 5 year thing.
So you said you have friends that have had ALS. After connecting with people with the disease, how would you say that your stories have either aligned with them or diverged from them?
Yeah, I think we all like we're all one family, no matter what type of ALS you have. We all hope for a cure for ALS. But them having a more extreme case, it it makes it hard to see them. The progression is rapid,
Mhm.
and so it's just hard to watch that. And then you kind of like take that into your own life and realize how short life really is. I guess. You know.
Would you say there's any misconceptions about ALS progression or ALS in general that you would like to challenge?
Yeah, I think that just because you have the disease doesn't mean like you're any lesser of a person. I guess, because it's a disability, obviously. But I think like people once I discovered I had it, people kind of like tended to leave or step back, I guess, because they didn't like understand what ALS was. And they may have gone online just to see what it was, and that they see all these stories about death and stuff. and so they kinda, like, feel that that might be my story too, and they don't know how to approach that, so it's kinda like yeah, it's kinda unfortunate that that's the perception, I guess.
Would you say there's any ways that you defy the common stereotype of someone with ALS?
Yeah, I think you just gotta just do the opposite of you have to live, you know? You can't allow yourself to digress into death, you know? And you just have to fight it and stand up to it, and as hard as it is, you just need to, like, try to, like, live your life like you did before as much as possible. Obviously, it's more difficult, but,
Can you think of any examples where you did something that isn't traditional of someone with ALS or something that others portray as someone with ALS? Like, is there any examples specifically where you defy that stereotype and, like, live even though people don't think that people with ALS are people who are fighters or people who are positive or people who are hopeful? Can you think of any specific examples?
yeah, I start trying to get out and venture. I drive still, so that's helpful. And you just have to like do stuff, even though it's harder to do because you have a disability, and it's not as easy. You have to haul like 10 different things with you in your car,
Yeah.
to get where you're going. It's like you have to do that just to do it. You can't allow ALS to overtake your life. And to get out there and venture and try to hit the trails and go hiking and stuff still.
Do you think there's anything unique about ALS that isn't the same with other diseases?
There's no cure, obviously, for ALS at the moment. There's no cure. And, I mean, all diseases are horrible, obviously, you know, but I just hope that there's more, awareness to ALS and the funding to find a cure, that improves. But it's becoming more common. It seems it's becoming more common that you see people with ALS. I don't know if it's just because I like look it up or whatever, and I have friends with ALS, and then we connect on Facebook and stuff. But it seems to be like more, like not popular, but like a popular
I know what you're
disease, I
saying,
guess.
yeah, yeah.
You know?
Do you think there's any core experiences or values that unite people across the ALS community? So, like, for example, someone previously said, like, a lot of people experience, like, lower extremity, stuff as their first signal. Someone else said, like, they're united through resilience and having to fight. Another one said they're united through finding community even when it's, like, a hard time. So is there anything that you think you would say unites ALS members throughout the country and throughout the world?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're all fighting for a cure, obviously. And it's like a family because like you go on Facebook and stuff like that to your groups and things, and we all have the same story still. We're all just trying to survive, be accepted, you know, and just live our life as regular as we can. And the the ALS community is like so strong and so supportive of each other, which is great.
On the opposite hand, what areas would you say you see the greatest variation amongst people living with ALS?
I'm sorry. What? Like,
So, amongst people living with ALS, where would you see the greatest variation between individuals, such as in progression, in where it affects them, the community around them? where would you basically w you just discussed what you see is very similar amongst the community. Where would you say is there great variance amongst individuals living with ALS?
Yeah, I think we still like even though we're all the same with ALS, that we each have our own stories, you know, our own struggles as well. Where some people are like highly supported, with their disability and stuff, and others might not have the access to that support. Which is important, obviously, to have as much support as you can with ALS.
Would you would you say here in the Northwest, you're given a lot of support being close to Portland's and being close to, like, a city environment?
Absolutely, yeah. The I believe that the ALS um, organization in Portland is very effective. They have a great outreach and they're very supportive of um, the people that go there and belong to that group. I just have become so close to them, and they have a huge support system for sure. Yeah, and I could move anywhere else, away from them for sure.
Can you walk me through a typical morning? What challenges you now that it didn't used to, and what still feels familiar?
Yeah, waking up is the first thing. It takes more gumption just to have an incentive to wake up. Like before, it'd be like 7, 8 o'clock or whatever. You'd be like up and ready to go, because you have plans for the day. But now everything is like twice as hard to do. It takes twice as long to get dressed, twice as long to shower and do things. So the motivation kind of drops off, in the mornings because it's so hard to get going. And then some days you don't feel like even getting up to go anywhere. So you may just take it easy for the day and just rest in your bed. Yeah.
Are there any specific tasks that used to be automatic that now are meaningful, achievements?
I yeah, I still like I did oh, I've always liked to do yard work, and even now it's more strenuous to do and more difficult. I still attempt to do it. It works. It just takes longer. I just need to prepare myself for the for the day. But as you progress, it's harder to do things, and you have to rely on people more to come help you out. So every chance I get to do that, I do it.
Before ALS, how would you say you defined yourself? Such as in, like, through work, through hobbies, through support system? How would you say you defined yourself before, receiving your diagnosis?
Yeah, it's very outgoing, and I did a lot of stuff outside, and I've always tried to be like motivated and positive anyway. That really hasn't like slacked off too much. But it does change your life definitely, from before because you're not as capable to do things as you were before.
So, what would you say, like, what are the words you'd use to describe yourself pre-diagnosis?
Um, I tried to be the same person I was before, So strong would be, I was strong as far as making sure that I did my, what I wanted to do. And yeah, so pretty much I'm the same person I was before, but just not as capable or active as before.
Are there any aspects of your, as you said, like such a strength, of your pre-ALS identity that you fight hardest to maintain? such as like being active or do being the person who takes care of the lawn or anything like that that you fight the hardest to preserve?
Yeah, just being uh, dependent upon myself. It's hard to accept help from people, and you just fight as long as you can to retain being that person you were before. But at one point, you have to give in the fact that you aren't that same person. So asking for help from people has become difficult. I'm not as dependent as I was before.
Sorry. When mobility or speech becomes challenging for you, what would you say is running through your mind?
Um, Fear probably is running through my mind because every time something else arises or you feel like certain pains or your speech isn't as strong as it used to be, you kind of fear that you're starting to go down decline, and that's worrisome because you don't want that, you know.
Are there any tools or strategies that you've discovered that help you keep your mobility, keep your speech going, or other aspects that your otherwise your progression would hurt?
Yeah, I always use all the possible tools that I have, with walkers and crutches and walking sticks and things and scooters and stuff like that, just to keep up the stamina, in my life, to be able to make it through the day still. So I do access all those things. And I've done the voice banking program too, in case my voice goes away eventually.
Can you explain that program a little bit more?
Which one?
The speech.
Oh, the voice thinking? Yeah, it's just with the program, it's it's through the Steve Gleason, and it helps you save your voice as it is currently. So if your voice does go away, you'll still have access to your own voice that you can use down the road on your iPad or whatever.
Hey, I that program is cool.
It's great, yeah.
Yeah. How have your relationships with your spouse, your children, your friends, or anyone else in your life changed since diagnosis?
Yeah, it's kinda mixed actually, with m my my family. It's gotten stronger. I think the uncertainty of not knowing, um, what's to come, you kinda, like, readjust your thinking about life and how important it is, you know? And, like, unfortunately, with my kids, some of them, um, don't wanna, accept that I'm in decline, and it's not a bad thing, it's just they they know me as who I was, you know, and they don't want to accept the fact that this disease is as bad as it is, you know. And I totally understand that, But overall, though, everyone has been more supportive of me with my disease. I've gotten closer.
Can you share any stories specifically of unexpected kindness or other acts recently?
Yeah, my sister, she lived recently. She lived 4 hours away, and she has been at every appointment I've had past 3 years. She's come, and that's quite a drive. And now she moved further away, so now she's 7 hours away. But she'll still be here for any of my clinic visits and stuff, just to keep up and just to be there for me. And that's just amazing that she does that. I totally appreciate her doing that because that's quite a drive from Montana
That is quite a
to
drive, yeah.
Portland,
Yeah.
but she's there for me, you know.
Are there any on the opposite hand, are there any unexpected challenges you faced within your family or beyond?
Um, Probably just that whole not knowing what ALS is, and then having the perception of maybe reading into it, too much, and then thinking that, you know, before I started taking Tofersen, it was pretty bleak, really, you know, and so, I mean, people were concerned about me. I think I probably have lived longer than most people thought I would be living, and myself included, really, because you don't know how long you have, you know, but that's probably, yeah, the biggest thing would be like people expecting that you wouldn't be here now, but you are, which is good, obviously. Yeah.
Are there any friends that have stepped up in ways you never anticipated?
Yeah, I have a close friend, Art. He from where I used to work at before I stopped working. He's been there for me quite a bit, and I think our friendship's been stronger because of this. He's always checking in with me to see how I'm doing. That's It was kinda the same thing where it's like no one knew what ALS was where I worked until then. I had it, and I kinda, like, made other people aware what it was. So they were kinda, like, obviously concerned about me and because I'd been there for 15 years, and close friendships. But he stepped up quite a bit, and he still checks in on me, every few days. We hang out.
So you said you have friends with ALS as well. How have you experienced support groups or online groups or anything else purposely to connect people with ALS?
I have, yes. I actually helped form a group here in Hood River. There at the time when it started a couple years ago, there was 7 people that had come to it. They had ALS, which is kinda high for this small community. But through that, we've been able to help support each other, and most of them I didn't even know before, so we kinda made new friendships with that. And then obviously online is a whole big thing too, where, being on the internet, I got friends that are in different countries that have ALS. And I call them friends because, I have never met them obviously in person, but we all have that same story, we're all going down that same journey. I feel like we're all just connected that way, So I think the support is really strong on the internet as well.
How has your local ALS United chapter helped you out, and such as in equipment or in information or anything else?
Yeah, mostly support, obviously, and anything I need, they're there for to help me find. They've helped me with different tools, with ramps for my stairs, and they have like a loan closet, like most places do. And I got, got my scooter from them too, which is a great asset to be able to get out of my house at least and walk around town or whatever. So it's really, yeah, giving me an outlet and an ability to live by myself actually, and make it through the day with what they've helped me out with.
What other local resources, such as clinics, local nurses, or anything else have you relied on since diagnosis?
Yeah, through the ALS organization, United, um, Northwest United. They have a local program where they have volunteer people, and people in your own community volunteer to help you out. And I got this this gal that comes in to my house once a week, and she'll help me with my laundry or wash my dishes or dust or clean or shop for me, whatever I need to have done. So that's been a great outlet too for the local community to be involved as well, because there are quite a few people who have volunteered for that program.
What about clinics? Which clinic do you use, and how have you is there any have they helped you transport to the clinic, or what basically, sorry for rambling, which clinic do you use, and how has that helped you as well?
Yeah, as far as the local clinics, I do like physical therapy and occupational therapy here in Hood River, and it's just down the road here in the hospital. I do like my speech therapy down there. And the fact that um, the one drawback, I guess, about having ALS is when you live in a small community, the resources are pretty limited. So people that are further out, they'd have to drive to the bigger cities to get help. You know, but through the ALS Northwest, they do travel obviously to um, these small towns to help out. So there's always someone there, that you can call on to help you find a connection in town, even.
Can you discuss your involvement with Tofersen and the ALS medication in general?
Yeah. So I received Tofersen Cosati um, in 2023. I was the first person to receive it after the FDA approval. So I know that many people have been doing the test trials beforehand, and it's because of them. Like I can I can use Tofersen, because of the trials, and I appreciate that greatly. But it's allowed me to it's stabilized my condition, and it's improved my condition as well. So we're kind of like in this weird spot where it's like we're not sure what's going to happen as far as like the improvements and stuff, because that's not something that has ever been seen with people with ALS. And I know other people that I communicate with that have the same mutation I have, the SOD1 gene. They Most of them have had the same effect as well, where it's helping increase their leg stamina and their legs are stronger. I used to have two leg braces, like ankle braces. Now I only got one on my weak leg. And my strength has just increased tremendously in my legs and my arms and stuff. It's very helpful.
I'm glad that it's been helpful in your process.
Yeah.
So you say it's slowed down your progression, or not just slowed down your progression, but also helped increase some of the things that you previously lost?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's absolutely slowed down, stabilized my condition, and as well as increased my condition as far as help my strength in my legs. I regained more strength in my legs, and it's just an amazing drug. And I'm glad that it came to us. Unfortunately, though, the drawback is this drug is only for people with the SOD1 gene mutation. So, um, which is great for us, obviously, but we're only like 2% of the whole ALS community that have that access. So hopefully they can, through our studies, they can help transfer that into the other community ALS, people.
When you feel discouraged through whether it's through speech, which most or like mobility, what keeps you going and what gives you the courage to keep being yourself?
Yeah, it's just about like not allowing ALS to win, and I have kids and it just I want to be there for my kids. That's a motivational thing for me to be there for my kids years from now, and just not allowing ALS to win. That's all. That's what it is.
So, would you say you've previously said that you don't love receiving help and you don't love being a burden on other people and you like being dependent? But are there any people that you do turn to in times of need? And when you are um, discouraged or when you do need help, are there who are the people that you turn to in those times?
Yeah, absolutely. It helps to have a connection with people because with this disease, it's so negative, obviously, and you feel like there's no hope, I guess. But I've been able to connect stronger with my friends and my family, and even like my ex-wife and we were close still, because of my disease. It's like brought more perspective into like what life is really about, you know. And so certain friends have stepped up, and I know that there's someone there that's going to help me out no matter what. Even like I needed a ride to Portland to do my Tofersen injection because it's in the spine and you can't drive afterwards. And the gal that helps me with my breathing equipment that comes to my house actually offered to come pick me up and take me to Portland for my injection, which is great. I just amazing that people that they feel like they want to get help out like that. You know.
So you mentioned how you've changed your perspective on life. Can you delve into that a little bit more? What would you say has changed?
Yeah, just like knowing that life is short. Like we all just take that for granted. We think we have forever. Because like I had plans to travel, and buy a house and just so many different things, for the future. But now, like that timeline that I had 30 years, I thought I had 30 years. It's 2 to 5 years. So you kind of have to like smoosh all that, just but you can't like allow that 2 to 5 years to like sit in your head because it's like some people I know that they've had ALS for 18 years. So it's possible just to carry on beyond that 5 year mark. But it's just about being positive about life, knowing that, you still have to live life to the fullest, you know? And I just like try to preach words like, no matter who you are, you don't know what tomorrow holds, you know? And you just have to live life. Keep on, keep it on, Can't stop.
So you said you had plans of the future, such as traveling and other like moving locations, everything like that. Would you say there's any goals, big or small, that you continue to pursue today?
Yeah, I do have access to an RV that my when I was diagnosed with ALS, we did a fundraiser to raise money to purchase an RV for me to travel around the country. And through the generosity of my local community and the GoFundMe page and stuff, I was able to purchase an RV. And so my goal is to still use that RV as long as I can. I'm still trying to set it. I'm setting it up to as my changes come, but still be able to use my RV and get out there and travel the country and see different things in the country. And
So you talked about fundraising, to get your RV. Are there any other times that, sharing your story, local or broader, has impacted ALS advocacy?
yeah, I believe that through the fact that I've been fortunate enough to be on the news a few times, I think that has really helped out. I've met people from Portland that have come here to just to visit and stuff, and they saw me walking down the road, and they're like, "Hey, I saw you on the news," which is cool, like a little celebrity or whatever, But I think just doing things like with that, and then with I was on the news with the Costati injections too, just making that like my outlet, to spread awareness.
Have you done anything specifically with ALS United or other ALS associations, such as fundraising or any events?
Yeah, I try to be as involved as I can with the fundraising with the ALS Northwest organization. They have walks that they do, and I always go to the walks that they have, and you help raise money through the walk and stuff. And then there's the gala and stuff like that they have that I try to participate in and stuff. So yeah, I try to help out as much as possible to spread awareness of the association to the organization, united to other people as well.
Can you recall a moment recently that surprised you with joy or laughter?
Yeah, I think being with my kids is the most motivating aspect of my life right now. And it's just the goofy things they do just bring joy to me, and I just enjoy being around them. And they're pretty much the reason that I fight, to overcome ALS.
Are there any specific moments recently that you've can recall that was just put a smile on your face?
Yeah, just my son Bradley, he's so helpful. He has a disability, he has cerebral palsy, but he's still just like a trooper, you know. And because of him, he's like a great reason why I fight for my survival, I guess. But he just does the goofiest things sometimes, and just having his compassion he has, just I love him to death, and just the way that he is, just always brings a smile to my face when I'm around him. Yeah.
So you said you have familial ALS, um, and as well as having children. How do you look at that? Like, how does that make you feel, and how does that promote you even harder to advocate for ALS and all of those, like, such as Tofersen or those advancements in familial ALS treatments?
Right. Yeah. So with the SOD1 gene mutation, it's passed down through the genes, obviously. And there's only been one other person in my family that's had ALS. So, which is good and bad both, because with the SOD1 gene mutation, it could just take off, through my kids or through their kids or whatever, because it's kind of dormant until a certain time. And I know people that I know, they have lost brothers and sisters and dads, and just ravaged the whole family. And so the fact that once Tofersen came available, I was just on board with it because I wanted to, to try it to make sure that it would, be something that if my kids did get affected or their kids got affected, that it could be something that could help them out. And I know, like, once you're diagnosed with SOD1 and the gene mutation, that you can start taking Tofersen, Cosati right away, and which is great. That way, you don't have to like, you know, 2 years later realize you have that, and it can just start stabilizing you from day one, pretty much. So you don't have to go through the digression.
So you said one other family member had ALS. Um, wh who is that in relation to you?
Yeah, my dad's cousin had it,
Okay.
and unfortunately, like, they are kind of, secretive about their health and stuff, and so not much is known about it, if it was actually, like, the gene mutation, because they didn't actually do any, like, testing, obviously. With, Tofersen being so new, they didn't have it back then, obviously, and the gene testing wasn't available like it is now, so we're not 1,000% sure that that was the same thing, but we're just assuming it was, you know, for that reason, you know.
So sorry, one second. Um, so both of your children, have they been tested for the SOD1 gene, or how is that manifested within your family?
Yeah, my kids, most of my kids have not been tested. It's just the unfortunate thing about ALS is like if you get tested and it shows that you have the gene, it's not like 1,000% chance that you're going to actually have ALS. So just knowing that you have that gene in the back of your mind is kind of a scary thing, so it can dictate your life going forward, you know. And so some of them have not chosen to be tested yet, you know. And I know my siblings have been open to being tested just to hopefully see if we can find where it's at and where it's not, to help their kids and stuff like that going forward.
What's one piece of advice you would give to someone newly diagnosed?
And don't give up, just don't give in to ALS. You can choose to live, you can choose to die. You need to choose to live. It's when you hear you have this disease, it's so easy just to give up, knowing, watching videos of what is to come, but you just need to fight and just keep living a life, and just try and beat this disease and don't let it consume you.
What is something you want someone outside of the community to understand about ALS and the people that have it?
Yeah, we're just like we were before. You knew me before I had ALS, you know, and I'm the same person. It's just like trying to comprehend what ALS is and how it's a livable disease, you know, and just to be there for someone that has it and to not be afraid to talk to them about it, and try to comprehend what it is and understand what ALS is. It's not, it might be scary, but the person that has ALS is just as scared as the person that doesn't. It's just to be there for them, to help comprehend what it is for yourself too.
Is there anything else specifically you'd like to discuss before the final question? Is there anything you want to I can help you expand upon or to better tell your story?
Yeah, it just like you just can't give up. You know, Being told you have ALS is probably the worst thing that could ever happen to you, you know? But you just have to keep living, and just don't let it consume you, and just try and find the positives in life every day.
So the final question. Looking ahead, how do you like your story to shape future research, care, or public help?
Yeah, I we need to keep the funding up for research, at the national level, not allow the cutbacks to happen to research for any disease, obviously, because it takes money to research, and it's important that we we try and find a cure, you know, and too many people are dying for no reason, and that's unfortunate. I I was on the news twice. Once was when I was diagnosed,
Mhm.
and then once when I started taking Quasati.
Torferson?
Yeah, the Tofersen.
You were like the first person to take it, right? Or like in the state of
Yeah,
Oregon.
and yeah, like once it was approved by the FDA,
Mhm.
I was the first person in the country to receive it.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, that was. Yeah, so they like, you know, yeah, it was a big deal, obviously. So the news came and stuff.
Makes sense.
I was on the news, and then and then how it goes, like other little news stations, take it and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, usually like one news station like that does the actual story, and then
Yeah.
there's multiple news stations that just like repeat the same story.
Yeah, because I think I saw it like in like 10 different places, throughout the whole country.
Yeah, it is like the
Yeah.
same story.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was just cool.
Yeah,
Oh, like I'm on CNN or whatever, and
yeah.
it's like the local CNN or
Mhm.
it's still CNN. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still very cool.
Yeah.
Um, let me know when you're ready to start.
Yep. Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay. Um, so basically, you're on camera. I'm
Yeah.
not on camera.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be asking you the questions, and you're just gonna be answering them.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Sounds good. Yeah.
So we're done with all the questions.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to discuss briefly, or are you all good?
Yeah, I think I'm good. Yeah, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
So, what? Someone in your family had ALS?
My mom had
Like your
ALS.
mom, right? I guess that's
Yes.
probably, yeah. And she's passed on.
Yeah, she passed 4 years ago, roughly.
Yeah.
August 4th of 2021.
Yeah. Was that hard for you to deal with like ALS
yeah.
and her and stuff?
She also had SOD1.
Yeah, that's what I read. Yeah. Yeah, she was just really like on the edge there. Fortunately, it came too late for her.
Yeah. And she had bulbar, and it was pretty quick.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. As like a child, did you find it hard to like accept?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
People always said I was more mature than my age showed, so I guess that helped.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It depended the day. I was in denial for a little while too, to be honest, as most kids tend to be.
Yeah. Same with my kids. Yeah.
But it was also so quick, so it was kind of like crazy, because she got diagnosed and passed like 3 to 4 months later.
Oh, is that
so it was real quick.
It is. Huh? Yeah, I think without Casati, Tofersen,